Okay, so in this video, we're going to be looking at the basic setup for Cookie Jar. So essentially, if we look at this page, we simply have a simple dialog box that has an accept and decline button. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I have a clear button as well, so we can go ahead and I can say accept. As you see here, what I'm doing here is we are loading in some Google fonts. The reason I'm doing that is just so we can quickly see when Cookie Jar has actually loaded our content. Because a lot of times if we're doing analytics or other kind of backend scripts, it's hard to really know if they're loaded or not visually. So here we're just loading some Google fonts and applying it to the page so that we can quickly see when and when not it is applied. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a Cookie Jar stack to the page. Okay. And just while we're here, I'm going to add a Cookie Jar content stack to the page as well, because we're going to need both of them for this basic setup. Inside Cookie Jar, I'm going to add in my fonts. So here I've added in my fonts. Now, I do recommend that you go ahead and turn off render in edit mode. Okay, inside these settings. This will now, for fonts, as you see here, what it does is it actually loads in that data. For better performance inside edit mode, I definitely recommend we turn that off. Okay, I recommend you just always turn this off. It would be just for the best. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to ignore all of the classes here. Okay, check out our more advanced setup where we're going to dive into those. Basically now, Cookie Jar has two options. We have the ability to remember our consent across sessions or remember it just for this session. And then we have implied consent. And what that means is we default to accepting consent, and then we allow the person to accept or decline after that. We'll show you an example of that. Let's go ahead and quickly, I'm just going to use some default stacks here. I'm going to go ahead and add a one column. Go ahead and add some padding, add a little bit of round corners. We're going to add a markdown stack into here. Put in some text. And then in this plus button, we have the ability to add accept and decline options. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, let's go ahead and add a two column in there. We're going to add we're going to do accept here and decline here. And then all I have to do is add in your favorite button stack into here. So we're going to go decline. And then just for fun, let's go ahead and change the color of that to, let's do red. And then we're going to do, this is the accept button. Accept. And let's go ahead and change that from red to green. Cool. So now we have our box, our content, and we have our Cookie Jar in there. Let's go ahead and preview. So here by default, we'll see that the font is not loaded. And if I go ahead and click the accept button, it loads. Now, since I accepted, it's going to remember my consent, and each page load after that will just load it by default. And just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a little bit of advanced stuff here. I'm going to add that clear button because it makes it a little bit easier to play and demo with stuff. So I'm just going to add a button here, call it clear. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside this and I'm just going to copy the clear class. Okay. And then we're going to go into this button and paste it into the class setting. Now I have a Cookie Jar clear button. So let's go ahead and look at that. Let's clear the consent. Okay. So now this says if I were to have a very new session, I'm going to go ahead and hit decline. And if we'll notice now, if I just go ahead and out and go back in, you'll see that it no longer loads. It doesn't load our optional window, our disclaimer anymore, because I've declined it and it remembered that. Now, I did promise that I was going to show you what implied consent was. So on this page, let's go ahead and click implied consent, and we're going to preview the page. And what we'll notice is, even though I haven't accepted or declined, that Google font is loaded by default. Now, if I go ahead and decline, then it actually is removed from the page, and you'll see that is no longer there, and it won't be there on subsequent page loads. But implied consent does load that content by default. One last feature inside the Cookie Jar content stack is the ability to have your position. So a lot of times what we'll see is this consent box is kind of pinned to the bottom of the browser. So if we see here, I'm going to go ahead and click this bottom. And if we preview the page, what we'll see is that the consent box is now pinned to the bottom of my browser window. okay, instead of inside with my page content. This is a very common thing that you might want to do, with disclaimers of this type. Now, obviously, in this view, the decline and accept buttons are kind of really far away apart. You have the full ability to do whatever layout you want. For example, here's an example of a really interesting layout that you could potentially build. I review this sort of layout in our multi-facet privacy video, but you can go ahead and see just how you can make this custom and different, not just a paragraph of text with 2 buttons, right? Really go ahead and make the design your own.